Hi, I'm Kelsey Sizer. Welcome to What's the Story, a short podcast from Light Reading where we take a step back from the most significant topics in telecom to tell you the latest news, how we got here, what it all means, and what to expect next. Today I'm talking with Light Reading's Jeff Baumgartner about the recent Cable Next Gen Technologies and Strategies Conference in Denver. Jeff discusses why some cable companies prefer to focus on developing DOCSIS 3.1 over DOCSIS 4.0, what cable operators should focus on to improve customer experience, and how things are going for Comcast and Charter's mobile businesses. We also discuss what's next for the new radio over coax project and how that's impacting Charter's 5G and CBRS strategies. Hey, Jeff, welcome back to What's the Story? How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Kelsey. How are you?
Good. Did you get any snow when you were in Denver at the Cable Next Gen Technologies and Strategies Conference?
Not this time. I think we've kind of figured out that the cycle is every other year we get clobbered by a snowstorm. Like we had that bomb cyclone a while back.
Mm-hmm.
I think last year there was a pretty good snowstorm right in the middle of it. This year the weather was pretty good. So next year, we'll probably get 2 feet. We'll get 2 feet of snow. Yeah,
cool.
So just prepare.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad the weather held off for you guys. So speaking of the event, what were some of your biggest takeaways this year?
Yeah. One interesting tidbit. This was the 18th annual Cable Next Gen event. Alan Bresnick, who's been running point on it for the whole time, told me we've done 15 of these in person and 3 that were done digitally. During COVID, I had to do that. And I had to look back. I was like, what were we covering back in the early days? And I think at that time, we were kind of on the cusp of DOCSIS 3.0. So it hadn't even been deployed yet. We were just talking about it. So, that was like an entire DOCSIS ago, But,
that's wild.
Yeah. So, I think this year, a lot of talk about DOCSIS 4.0, 3.1 plus, and then this time around was the first time we did, we were calling it day 0. And before the real event, day 1 and 2 of Cable Next Gen, we did this, they put together a Cable MVNOs summit to kind of talk about cable operators getting into the mobile business. I think Midco is the latest one that jumped in. They were with us here at the show. NCTC, which does deals for a bunch of hundreds of independent cable operators, have great representation from them to talk about what's going on in the market with they put together agreements with AT&T and Reach. So a lot of talk about that. And then, 4.0 and kind of what's, it's going forward. I think right now, Comcast is pretty much out in front in terms of deployment. Elad Nafshi with Chief Network Officer with Comcast and did a keynote. And, I think one message about 4.0 was that, they're at scale. They're getting to scale now with 4.0. And Charter has 4.0 on part of its portion of its HFC network. So Justin Cowell with Charter talked a little bit about that and their progress. And then there's still a lot of interest among other operators with this. It's basically next generation DOCSIS 3.1. It goes under a lot of labels like 3.1 Plus or 3.1 Flex or 3.1 Extended. Take your pick. DOCSIS or Turbo 3 DOCSIS, all these names. But an example would be like Midco, right? I talked to them about the mobile side, and they're doing a bunch of fiber upgrades, but they're also going to look at 3.1 Plus to boost the downstream capability of their existing 3.1 networks with some new modems and gateways that support it, and they're not doing 4.0. So, and then on the other side, Charter was on my panel on 3.1 Plus, and yeah, they have no real plans around 3.1 Plus. They're very focused on 4.0 and probably using 4.0 CPE on 3.1 networks. So that was some of the discussion. Now, the other thing was, and we're starting to see a lot more of this in the cable arena, and there's a lot more discussion around network reliability and putting AI into the network to help with things like capacity management, but also to proactively fix issues on the network before they become customer impacting, and identifying a fiber cut really rapidly using AI and machine language, and kind of focusing on that instead of all the talk we have about speeds and feeds. I think speeds and pricing is always going to remain important in the broadband discussion, but you can really tell that the cable industry is trying to focus on the other aspects of what they're putting together, and kind of customer experience and network reliability is being pushed forward into
Yeah,
the
that
discussion. Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. That's also something that kind of mirrors the wireless uh, customer experience. I talked with Sylvia Kashish with Open Signal and MWC, and she was talking about a report they did that found that speed is not um, as important for wireless customers. Customers of 5G. Uh, it's more, reliability and network performance are some of the things that they focus on um, more. And I think because at a certain point, it's fast enough to do the basic things that they're doing. So it sounds like maybe that's also the case for some cable customers as well, as they just, it's fast enough to do the internet to uh, play their video games, do streaming. Um, yeah, so
Yeah, little chat
a
GPT
lot more
stuff.
performance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because we're not quite into the era, where we're doing holograms, in the house at this
Right.
point, and light field displays and all these things that they say, oh, out on the horizon, it may come someday, or all the AR and VR stuff that needs more bandwidth. Oh, and the other thing I forgot to point out was the low latency side. Yeah, cable's trying to push that as well, and Comcast has rolled that out. And I think to your point, kind of the good enough side of it, you look at fixed wireless access, and the speeds they offer are, they're definitely good enough for most people, and the price is pretty good. Typically, a lot lower than you'd expect from, or you get from some of the cable folks, and the deployment model, where a lot of it's uh, self-install. You just put it next to a window, and it's all self-install. And I think that experience has also helped their case. So I think cable also needs to kind of think about put a little more focus on that aspect of what they're doing. So to kind of match up in that area. And we are seeing some of that. Some operators are kind of put together kind of fixed wireless access like tiers. Maybe it's like 300 meg, and get a price point that's around what you'd get from T-Mobile, for
Mhm.
the 5G home product.
Yeah, looking at I pulled up this that report by Open Signal, and I'll link to it in the show notes. The title is "Speed Isn't Enough: What Really Matters to Consumers," and they have a graph here with key factors in choosing a wireless carrier in the U.S. And top was cost at 67%, for people, and then followed by reliability, coverage, and network quality were all around 50%. And then really only 19% of people, their top factor in choosing a wireless carrier was speed. So, I mean, I think it would make sense that some of those preferences would roll over to cable as well. Um,
Yeah, and I think it's harder for a consumer to understand, like, all right, what does that speed really get me? It's like,
mhm,
okay, more is better, okay, but is it what's it going to do to my ability to stream Netflix?
right.
Right? Yeah, it's like, well, I have fixed wireless access and I'm streaming Netflix just fine. So what's the problem? Or do I
Exactly.
need more than that? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and how much do they wanna pay to get a little
Hmm.
bit better if, things are working well enough? Also wanted to circle back, you had some comments on DOCSIS, 3.1 and 4.0. What are some of the factors that, kinda point cable companies down the 3.0 path or 4.0? Did they talk about that at the event of what some of the things they're considering in their strategy for which way they're going there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think on the decision point for going with like a 3.1 plus versus 4.0, some of it has to do with cost, of course, and then also um, what you think you need from the network. Because if you're going to do 4.0, you got to go to a distributed access architecture and put in a virtual CMTS and also think about if you want to upgrade to 1.8 gigahertz on your network. So that's a little more work and cost for that. And I think some operators believe, particularly around the tier two, tier threes, that maybe they don't need 4.0 right now. That they think they can get enough performance out of 3.1 for several years, uh, and then some of them are like, well, maybe the next step after 3.1 is going to be fiber to the premises versus DOCSIS 4.0. So it's the industry is, instead of like in lockstep on what to do next, there is kind of a fragmented path. There's a lot of different paths forward. One thing that did come up though was the development of unified 4.0 silicon, and it kind of obviates the old debate between if you're going to do FDX like what Comcast is doing versus extended spectrum DOCSIS, another option that a lot of the other operators will go to. So at least with unified, uh, it covers both of those, so it doesn't become an either or decision as much. So, and I think that will uh, maybe help spur adoption of 4.0 for some operators, because I think it relieves some of the uncertainty in the market that we've had in recent years. But and I think because of that, we're gonna see some operators also be in a period of reevaluation, what they want to do going forward. So I think that's a good sign in some ways. I think for the suppliers, it probably means there's going to be a little bit of a period of time, where the operators are going to be making this decision, which means they're not going to be actually buying anything at the moment until they decide what they're going to do.
That sound reminds me of whenever we do a review of a quarterly financial call when they say they're working through their backlog, and
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah,
things will pick up next quarter. So might
yeah.
hear
I
some of
think the
that
whole
from
industry's
some of these
had that.
vendors.
Yeah,
Right?
so
Yeah.
like there was all this inventory that was purchased, during the early period of COVID, and they had to kind of burn through the inventory that they bought
Right.
before
Sounds
they
like
can
we might
kind
be
of
coming
pick
up
up the
on.
ball. Yeah.
Yeah, might be coming up on another one of those periods again. Also wanted to talk a little bit more about the MVNO summit. How are things going in general for cable companies getting into the mobile business?
Yeah, I think that Comcast and Charter have shown that mobile can be a good new part of the business as a way to gain or at least retain your broadband customers. They're still kind of struggling to get back to broadband subscriber growth, um, and that adding mobile to the bundle uh, makes some sense. I think the question is there enough scale in that business to be as successful as some of these, like a Comcast and a Charter? I mean, they're big, they're giant. How does that affect, or what kind of an impact does mobile have on an operator that has 300,000 customers? They have to kind of weigh that decision and how much it costs to get into it, how easy it is, because they don't have the kind of resources that a Charter and Comcast have. So we have seen a lot more activity with these MVNEs, these enablers, right? And I think NCTC is kind of in that role. There was a company called Plintron who is kind of in that MVNE business, and I think they run on the T-Mobile network. So they're starting to engage with the cable industry. So it's like, hey, how quickly and how easily can you get them into that business? Especially if they don't have a lot of engineering resources to throw at it. When you're talking about billing, provisioning, putting together packages, access to devices, it's still not an uncomplicated business to get into.
Hmm. And, I remember I think it was at Cable Next Gen a few years ago, there was a speaker talking about uh, shifting the strategy for the triple play, which I believe is a typical, cable internet, cable TV, and then home phone service bundle. Do they talk about triple play anymore? Does it now include, mobile services, or is that kind of a defunct term? Just curious if
Yeah.
that ever comes up.
Yeah, I don't. It's interesting because I don't think you really hear the term triple play thrown around as much, and I think you kind of hear about the convergence bundle now. So with you're combining home broadband with mobile, I think is kind of the core of that strategy. Now, video, uh, is part of the triple play, quote unquote, and of course pay TV's struggling mightily right now. Uh, and I think cable operators are starting to become a little more indifferent about the role of video in their arsenals. They're not going to go crazy with promotions to save customers as much anymore. And then some cable operators have gotten out of pay TV altogether and ceding everything to the virtual MVPDs like YouTube TV and Hulu and Fubo and that group. Now Charter's a little bit different because I think that they're starting to see video as an active uh, beneficiary in the bundle again because they've done a bunch of new agreements with programmers where they now have the ability to add the advertising supported direct to consumer app for no additional cost to the pay TV package. So think Disney Plus, Peacock, AMC Plus. There's a number of them. I think it's like $80 worth of direct to consumer services. If you put them all together, it costs like $80 that are now going to be part of the package, for no added cost. So I think that they now see they can now present a video product that provides a lot more value Now they have the programmers on board to support that. So you're starting to see Charter develop some packaging options where it's not just broadband and mobile, but also video. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on going forward and see how successful they are as they onboard everybody and make it truly part of the overall experience.
Yeah, I think that's smart to offer as a bundle because there's a temptation there, I think, for a lot of people that there's just so many streaming services, and maybe you want to watch one show on Apple, and then you'll cancel when you're done with that season, and then with the bundle, at least you've got it all wrapped in with what you're already paying for.
Yeah, that's kind of built into the service, and you're not paying 7 different additional bills. That does create some value. Now, the only thing is it's still part of traditional pay TV, and I think that sector in general is still going to struggle, and we don't really know where the floor is. When the growth is, or when the losses are going to flatten out. But we are starting to see some gradual improvements in terms of the losses. So we'll see if that trend continues or if it gets worse or better. Yeah, hard to. We'll know. We'll have to have this discussion in about a year and kind of see where it is. Yeah.
Well, just to wrap up, wanted to briefly talk about the new radio over coax project that was brought up at the event and how that's impacting Charter's 5G CBRS strategy.
Yeah, so we reported about this initiative, it was last year. And it was just kind of this idea that was floating about that we had caught wind of. And as you said, it stands for New Radio over Coax. And the whole idea is to run 5G signals on the HFC network. Kind of getting, traditionally DOCSIS traffic would run up to like 1.2 to 1.8 gigahertz of spectrum. And then with 5G, I think they're talking about putting traffic up around 4 to 5 gigahertz. And I was always like, well, what's the strategic reasoning behind it? And so Justin Caldwell with Charter was on stage, and I asked him about that. And he clarified, well, number one, he said, there is this project, and clarified that it's not something that is an alternative or replacement for DOCSIS, because I think that was one question people had. But that it's there to help support Charter CBRS deployments, which are starting to introduce it in additional markets and getting into this full deployment pace for that, where the idea is to offload cellular traffic onto their network in areas where there's a lot of concentrated usage. So that's where they're going to focus the CBRS deployments, and that will complement the offloading that they're doing with Wi-Fi already in the home or on the metro network. So that's kind of where the tie-in is. Now, what I'm not as clear on is how far along they are. I know it's kind of been talked as a concept as far as like commercializing it and things like that. I don't have a good picture on that yet, but they have a better idea of strategically how it fits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. That'll be an interesting one to watch, and hopefully we'll hear more on the timing soon. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for going over the Cable Next Gen event. Glad it went well, and this has been really interesting. So thanks so much.
Sure thing. Good to catch up with you.
You too. Thank you so much, Jeff, for taking the time to talk today, and thank you to our amazing producer, Pierre Landrio, for making this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Light Reading Podcast for more interviews and insights from the team. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.